And it's a specific phase of life. Remember, age is more than a chronological fact. What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories, and they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
And so your friends who were like, who are you? You're out here doing politics. That's awful. What's wrong with you? What are they saying now?
Yeah, so I've had people I haven't spoken to in a long time, kind of in just friends I also speak to who are not interested in politics, reaching out to me saying, how do I get involved? How do I help Vice President Kamala Harris beat Donald Trump? And for me, it's just shocking. I just haven't seen anything like this.
Wow, you're interested in what I do. Okay.
Right.
Meanwhile,
they said, yeah, you know, all this stuff about Brat Summer and all that jazz. So I want to take a look at Trump versus Democratic margin. Just remind folks where we were at the end of the 2020 campaign. Joe Biden won voters under the age of 35 by 21 points. What do we see with Kamala Harris? Well, she's still ahead, but the margin here is significantly less than what we saw with Joe Biden back in 2020. She's up by just 9 points. You may make the argument that was better than Biden was doing before he got out, but compared to that Democratic baseline, where Democrats have historically in presidential elections, at least this century, been carrying that young vote by 20 or more percentage points, she is way down from that. So if this is unique support among young voters, I would like to know what non-unique support is. Is it even worse than this?
Is she doing better than Biden was, though?
She was doing slightly better. Maybe Biden was up by, like 6 on average or 5. This is maybe slightly better, but this is not game-changing stuff, Mr. Berman.
All right, what have we seen in terms of motivation?
Yeah, so, the other thing is we talk about vote choice, right? But let's also talk about motivation, right? Because it's not just who you would support, it's whether or not you'd come out to the polls. And this, I think, is rather interesting. Do Democrats say they're more motivated to turn out after Biden left the race? Well, we do see a significant portion of Democrats who say yes, 39%. The thing I was interested in was it disproportionately younger voters who said that they were more likely to turn out or more motivated to turn out. And what we see here is it's 42%. Not a big difference between 42 and 39%. So this idea, again, that the vice president has unique potential to dig in and get young voters to turn out, John, it's just not there in the numbers despite all the internet memes that are going around.
At least not yet.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, I have a feeling that the Kamala Harris party is about to come to an end, okay? Because we're still in the honeymoon phase of Kamala Harris becoming the Democrat Party presumptive nominee. And the polls don't seem to suggest she's getting the boost that she really needs in order to have a decent chance at beating Trump. And again, I'm not saying this because I am getting cocky, okay? I still believe that Trump supporters, conservatives, Republicans, people who actually really care about this country, independents, everybody needs to come out and to vote for Trump like never before if you want to save this country from the disastrous policies of the Biden administration, okay? And I think it's important to tell the truth about what's happening because the mainstream liberal media, they're trying to inject hopium into the Democrat Party, okay? The Democrat Party is dejected, right? They are extremely divided, okay? They're not excited, and switching to Kamala was their way of trying to change things, okay? And one of the ways they're going to try to change things in regards to the perception is that, hey, Kamala Harris is actually very competitive against Trump, that she can beat Trump, and this is why we should be excited. But that is, in fact, not really the case, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe that Kamala is a worse candidate than Joe Biden, right? Once Republicans get to tearing down Kamala Harris the same way that we tore down Joe Biden, who knows? Obama might decide to pull the plug on the cackling Kamala experiment, which I still think could happen because although most of the Democrat Party elites have endorsed Kamala, Obama still has not given an explicit endorsement of Kamala Harris, and people are asking questions about that. Rightfully so, because I personally believe if these polls for Kamala Harris don't get better, they could pull the plug on her. I think Kamala Harris realistically has 3 weeks to get it together, right? To improve her numbers, or else she might get overthrown just like Joe Biden did. And I know a lot of people are wondering, well, why should conservatives cheer this on? Well, the reason why is that even though the base did not care about Democrats overthrowing democracy to get rid of Joe Biden, they probably will care if they do it to Kamala Harris, right? Because she's a black woman. So it just will cause more chaos and destruction. And it would essentially guarantee a victory for Trump. Doesn't matter who the Democrats replace Kamala with, as long as it's not Michelle Obama. Now, if it's Michelle Obama, we're having a different conversation. So I guess you could argue, well, maybe we should, be soft on Harris, okay? Hope that she stays as the party nominee because we don't want Michelle Obama. But hey, Michelle has said she's not running no matter what. But who knows? If they overthrow Kamala, they might get that desperate. Because looking at these polls, I'm telling you, it does not really look good for Kamala Harris in regards to the historical polling against Trump, in which Kamala Harris has been losing. But also the recent polling as well, too, is suggesting that Harris is headed towards a landslide loss against Trump. And I want to react to CNN coping about their own poll, essentially showing Kamala Harris not doing as well as she should be doing, considering that the media is coordinating her as the next coming of the DEI Jesus. But yet she doesn't really seem to be getting the boost that she should be getting with the demographics of people that she's supposed to appeal to the most. So I want to talk about it, but before we get into it, we have to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Morgan & Morgan. Guys, I've been injured in a motor vehicle accident. You've probably been injured in a motor vehicle accident, or somebody that you know, okay? We all have somebody that we know, whether it be ourselves or somebody else, that has been injured. And sometimes that injury can be worth millions of dollars. And this is why the sponsor of today's video is Morgan & Morgan, who wants to let you know that they do not settle for lowball offers, because oftentimes that is exactly what insurance companies try to do to clients. But Morgan & Morgan will fight to get you what you deserve if you become their client. All law firms are not the same, and Morgan & Morgan is the biggest for a reason. They have won a lot, and it only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case. And as America's largest injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan is ready and prepared to take on insurance companies of every size. If you are in an accident or injured in any way, you should know how to protect your rights. Don't overthink it. Take actions to protect your rights today. For example, they have achieved significant verdicts in the past couple of months for victims involved in life-altering car crashes. They had a $12 million settlement out in Florida, 34 times the insurance offer, and $26 million out in Philadelphia, which is 40 times the highest insurance offer. And the best part is that the fee is absolutely free unless you win. If you've ever got seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you are just a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. And it is so easy. You can start your claim today with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/blackconservative, which is the special link in the description, or you can scan the QR code that you see on the screen in order to get started.
He and his extreme Project 2025 agenda will weaken the middle class. Like, we know we got to take this seriously. Can you believe they put that thing in writing? When you read it, you will see Donald Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and make working families foot the bill. America has tried these failed economic policies before, but we are not going back.
Yeah, so again, I'm not entirely sure why Democrats think that this is an effective attack, right? I mean, it's just so funny to me because it's just like, first and foremost, you're lying. Trump is not responsible for Project 2025. He already said it's not my plan. So to try to attack Trump on a plan that he says is not his, I think it's kind of silly. But also, you're lying, right? You're saying that Trump wants to cut Social Security and Medicare when he's explicitly come out here and said, no, I do not want to do that. That's not what I want to do. Now, notice how the fact checkers never fact check Democrats who just flat out lie about what Trump wants to do, right? You notice how, they never do that, right? But always fact checking Trump. Also, on top of that, to say that you don't want to go back to Trump's economic policies when his economic policies are probably the strongest part of his last administration, especially, again, when you look at the polls between the economy and immigration. Trump is polling the strongest, right? That is his strength. And Kamala is saying that, well, you don't want to go back to that, right? You don't want to go back to a great economy. You don't want to do that. Again, it just doesn't make sense, right? I mean, this is what you do when you don't have anything, right? When you have absolutely nothing at all, you don't even realize what you're saying actually really doesn't play into what you think you're trying to do, right? Because if you're telling voters you don't want to go back to lower gas prices, lower grocery prices, lower cost of housing, living, if you're telling voters that, I'm not sure how that's going to land, right? I don't think that that's a good strategy. But hey, if this is what they want to roll with, be my guest, right? You don't want to go back to a better economy, according to Kamala. And the hilarious part about this is that she's so incompetent that she'll probably think it's a good idea to come out and say, well, you don't want to go back to Trump's border policies either, right? You don't want to do that either, which again would be absolutely terrible thing to campaign on. But if this is what they want to do, fine. You know, I'm at the point where, hey, I might agree with you guys. Letting Kamala Harris stay in the race could be the best option, right? Because if this is how she's going to campaign, it's not going to work out well. It's not at all.
And I'm here with CNN's David Chalian to break down what we're learning in this important new poll. Take it away.
Well, we got our first look at a Harris-Trump race that is no longer hypothetical. And what you see here is there's no clear leader in the top line of the horse race here.
Okay, so I just want to go ahead and just burst CNN's bubble, right? They're trying to make it clear it's no clear leader because it's within the margin of error. Now, the margin of error is 3 points. Trump is up on Kamala by 3 points, right? So quite literally, if Trump was up by 0.5 percentage points more, it would be outside of the margin of error. Like, Trump is as close as it gets in this poll to basically just, again, outright leading. Now, when you combine this poll along with the context of the other polls as well, too, Trump is most certainly in the lead, right? If the election was held today, I would be very confident that Trump would win, right? I would be extremely confident. Now, again, things could change going into the future. A lot of people are saying, well, this is premature. We shouldn't be having this conversation yet. But let's be honest. Again, Kamala Harris right now is being crowned as basically, again, the next coming, right? She's going to slay Trump. She's the best thing since sliced bread. It's not going to get better for her than it is right now, okay? So if in a week, Kamala Harris is not outright beating Trump, that's a huge issue because once the Republican attack ads start to land, the more that people see Kamala Harris, remember, Kamala Harris started to tank amongst Democrat voters after they got exposed to her, right? The more she talked, the more debates they had, the more people were like, nah, I don't like Kamala, right? To the point where she had to drop out of the primary before receiving one vote. There's no reason to believe that the same thing is not going to happen now, even with the media protection, right? So the fact is, Kamala Harris is not only losing in this poll, even though, again, it's within the margin of error, but the fact that she's not outright leading is a terrible sign considering how there's been nothing but positive press for Kamala Harris for the last 2 to 3 days straight, right? Again, this is bad. This is real bad, okay? If I was in Democrat leadership and I'm looking at this poll, I would be very concerned, right? I would start to hit the panic button. Again, if in a week, Kamala Harris is not outright beating Trump in most of the polls. If she's not doing that, that is a terrible sign for Democrats.
A 3-point margin. That's within the margin of error, Dana. Donald Trump at 49% support. Kamala Harris at 46% support. That's about half the margin that we saw in the Biden versus Trump matchup the last couple of months that we polled. That was a 6-point race. This one now is a 3-point race. And if you look here, broken out by party, you see near total consolidation among Democrats for Harris, similar, more than 9 in 10 Republicans for Trump. Take a look here at the independents. Trump has 46%, Harris has 43%. Biden was losing independents to Trump in the last couple of months, according to our polling, by roughly 10 points. Now now Harris is just losing them by 3, though remember, Biden won them by 13 points in 2020 when he won that election.
Now let's talk
again,
about...
she's underperforming Biden in regards to where he was at in 2020, which again is a terrible sign, right? Because Biden barely won in 2020. And again, if Kamala Harris can't put up similar numbers, then she's going to have a really hard time winning, right? And I think that from here on out, at least after a week, okay, after a week, once the party is over, right? Once Kamala Harris starts to really get exposed, it's downhill, right? Her poll numbers aren't going to get better than they are going to get over the next week. I promise you.
About the coalition, what the president, now former candidate for re-election, Joe Biden, really struggled with was holding the Democratic coalition together. Where is Kamala Harris on that?
She's definitely making up ground with some of these key core constituencies. If you look here, this is a poll that we did with SSRS, contacting people we had polled in April and June, right? So you can actually track the movement. And you see here, young voters, it was a 7-point advantage for Trump in the spring over Biden. Now Kamala Harris has a 4-point advantage among young voters. Black voters, Joe Biden had a 47-point advantage in the spring. Kamala Harris has increased that to a 63 percentage point advantage there. Hispanic voters, Harris narrows Trump's advantage, but I just want to note again, Donald Trump numerically ahead among Hispanic voters within the margin of error. That was a key group in 2020 that Biden won overwhelmingly, so still work there to do for the Democrats. And among female voters, you see that Harris has increased the lead where they were tied among women when it was Biden on the ticket.
Wow, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. I want you guys to realize, again, these are probably some of the best numbers that Kamala is going to get. But again, they're really, really, really bad considering how she's supposed to provide a boost for these key demographics, but she's not really doing it enough to make a real difference, okay? Because she's only up by 4 with voters 18 to 34. So you're talking about young voters. She's only up by 4? Again, when her appeal is supposed to be to Gen Z. To black voters, she's only outperforming Trump by 63 points. That number should actually be about 80 or 85. To be honest with you, right? That's bad. 63 is actually pretty bad for somebody that, again, is being marketed as black, okay? With Hispanics, Trump still being up +2 or performing better than Kamala, +2. That number really should be 10 to 15% for Kamala Harris, okay? For her to really be comfortable with that number. Female voters, +5. Still terrible, right? Still consider how she is a female. That number should be more in the +10, +15 rate. Those are the numbers she has to hit in order to be competitive, okay? To be in a race in which she is likely to win. The fact is that with these numbers that you currently see, again, CNN is not going to break it down like this because, again, they're coping, right? They're not going to tell you the truth. With these numbers, Trump is winning, right? He's most certainly going to win if these are the margins, if these are the numbers. So again, this is not good. This is not good at all for Kamala Harris. She is weak, okay? This is the reason why Democrats were so afraid to run her, is because of this. She does not have the appeal that these people are claiming that she does, okay? It's just not there. And I also want to note that you're seeing a major difference between the generic Democrat polls where they just say, well, any Democrat versus Trump, in which Democrats perform pretty well. Okay, you got Democrats in that poll performing very strongly against Trump. And people like Cenk, who claims to be an expert, right? He's been doing this for years, right? Decades, dummy. He's citing these generic polls as justification for this idea that any Democrat outside of Biden can beat Trump. But when you actually name a specific Democrat, you don't see that result, right? Again, it's very obvious that these generic polls where they poll generic Democrat candidates are not accurate. You don't gain anything from it. But again, these people really thought that, well, if you just replace Biden with anybody, they can beat Trump, right? They're going to blow Trump out. It's going to be a landslide. There's no evidence whatsoever that that's the case. Zero. None. And this is what we're seeing, right? This is what we're seeing right now with these initial polls coming out about Kamala Harris, that you just can't replace Biden with anybody and they're going to beat Trump. That's not how it works.
Numbers are fascinating, especially given that important piece of information you just gave us, which is that these our polling company, our colleagues, went back and talked to the exact same people that they talked to earlier. Okay, let's talk about what voters want from their presumptive new nominee.
One of the numbers that just jumped off the page when the poll came back down was this is among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. Do you want the next Democratic nominee, her name is Kamala Harris, we know, to continue Biden's policies or take the United States in a new direction? 53% say continue Biden's policies. 47% say take in a new direction. A near even split among Democrats looking for a new direction here. I think,
which is terrible, which is absolutely terrible. Again, when you talk about the Democrat Party, right? If 50% of the party is saying, yeah, we don't really agree with Biden's policies, which are the core policies of the Democrat Party, that's really bad, right? That's actually terrible. That means your party is literally split, is divided on the policies of the party itself, okay? Which means you should probably reevaluate the platform of the whole party, which, you know, Democrats don't have a platform. But again, they don't even know what direction they want to go in. Over half of the country says, well, I want to go in a new direction. So it's going to be hard for Kamala Harris to campaign on Biden's policies when half of her party doesn't like Biden's policies, and she's attached to Biden's policies. Again, an absolute disaster. Okay, this is not good.
That is very interesting to watch forward how Kamala Harris campaigns on that. And then we've talked a lot about this all cycle long. Are you voting for a candidate or against a candidate? Take a look at what a difference a couple days make. For Harris, now it splits evenly. 50% of Harris supporters say they are casting their vote for her. 50% say they're doing it against Trump. Look at what that was when Biden was the nominee. 2/3 of his votes were against Trump. Only about a third, 37%, were for him. Harris changes that equation. Donald Trump, by the way, gets more affirmative support after the assassination attempt, after his convention. He's now up to 74% of his voters who say they are voting to cast their ballot for him. Only a quarter say they're casting their ballot to be opposed to Kamala Harris, Dan.
Yeah, which again is also great news for Trump, terrible news for Kamala Harris. Okay, so now what you're saying is that, well, Trump, in regards to why people are actually voting for Trump, which means that they're voting because they actually like the guy and his policies and the direction that he wants to take the country in. They're excited to vote for him. Only half of Democrats actually are voting for Kamala, right? And her policies in the direction that she wants to take the country in, because half the party doesn't even agree with the current direction of the Democrat Party, which is a disaster, an absolute disaster. Okay. So yeah, there's some marginal improvement for Kamala Harris over Joe Biden right now. But if you compare Kamala Harris, where she's at right now, to where Joe Biden was at in 2020, she's severely underperforming, right? And that is a big red flag. I'm just saying, I'm leaving the door open for Kamala Harris to be pulled before the DNC if she does not improve these numbers, because these numbers are the best numbers she's going to get. And if it stays the way it is right now, yeah, this could backfire big time on the Democrats. That's what it looks like to me. But hey, we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.